Designer A is getting the right fit clients. They're already sold on what they do, their process, their values, their aesthetic. They don't need a whole lot of convincing. Designer B without a brand is getting a lot of looky-loos and tire kickers. They're getting kind of unclear inquiries. They're going back and forth with people. They're getting on calls. They're doing a ton of emails. They're putting out proposals that are not getting responded to. They're getting ghosted.
Welcome to the Interior DesignHer podcast, real-world business education for interior designers. In today's episode of the Interior DesignHer podcast, we're speaking with Ericka Saurit, founder of Saurit Creative, about branding and why your less talented competitors keep winning the luxury projects you should be getting. The truth is, far too many highly talented interior designers watch their competitors book dream clients while they are stuck explaining their worth to prospects who ultimately ghost them. During our conversation, Ericka explains that your branding problem isn't visual, it's psychological. The difference between chasing clients who waste your time and attracting clients who value your expertise comes down to building trust before your first conversation. If you're tired of watching less skilled designers win projects while you struggle to communicate your value, you're going to love my interview with Ericka Saurit. Let's get to it.
Ericka, before we dive into discussing everything you possibly can teach us about branding, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you got started with branding and how you started your own business.
Great, I will. Thanks, Doug. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to talk about branding and all the things that is involved with our industry and how it really supports interior designers to live their best life and have their best business. I came to this as an interior designer. I will say even before that, I grew up in High Point, North Carolina. So I have been exposed to the home furnishings industry literally my entire life. Everyone I know was involved in some way or another. So I understood, not just from a style point of view. In fact, I didn't understand style because I couldn't get into the showrooms, but what I understood was the industry and the commerce side of it, how it is like an entire, business around selling, making, manufacturing, distributing, and marketing furniture, home furnishings. So, so I promptly went to art school instead of design school. I just didn't have a lot of counseling around like what design really was, but I knew I was creative and I loved making things. I loved drawing and painting and all that. So I went to art school. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in studio art that taught me how to understand craft and make things and materials. And that was really great. I worked for a little while after school in a gallery, and then I worked in a landscape architecture firm. And I saw how creative and analytical design was, and I really loved that. And so I left New Orleans, which is where I was living, and I went to graduate school for interior architecture. So I have a master's degree in interior architecture. I practiced all around the world for about 10 years, living in China, Shanghai, and Beijing, traveling for work throughout Europe. I came back to New York City to work for a while, and that's when I transitioned into a career in marketing, specifically for the design firm that I was working for, which was 15 years ago now. So that sometimes you have to take a couple steps back to go forward, which was great. I left the world of, CAD drawings and wall sections completely behind with no regrets, like, see ya. I don't want to do that anymore. But what I found my value is communicating and advocating for the design team. What I started doing was, the marketing team pulled me in from the design side to talk about the projects that we were trying to pitch to the client, or that they were trying to get buy-in from the client. And I could hear and watch the response from the clients when the design work was presented by a designer versus someone on the marketing or sales or business development team. And I was able to go back and translate then the actual kind of what I felt to be the intention, which led to better design work and got us projects faster and made happier clients. And I realized then, okay, that's what marketing is. It's not this like evil thing trying to sell people things they don't need. It's actually communicating the value of something that will actually help people and make their lives better, make their projects better, make their, make everything run smoother. So that's where my marketing career began. I went back to school and did some post-grad work in marketing and branding, and then worked for other types of businesses in our industry. I worked for manufacturers I worked for two kind of very high-end home furnishings, like upholstery, case goods manufacturers here in North Carolina, one contract and one residential. And then I worked for a very large tech company in between, who was building a kind of elevated tier of homes for the platform and wanted to communicate more closely with hosts to help them understand interior design. So it was sort of I sat between the marketing and the interiors or the environments function to help create content and onboard people to what interior design was really about. So how do they understand product? How do they understand really what makes a space function better? What's going to make it sell better or list better? And so it was a really interesting way to use my background in interior design as well as in product and in marketing. And in 2020, I started my own business, Start Creative, which is so this is our 5th year in business, serving exclusively the interior design, architecture, build, and home furnishings manufacturer client base. I couldn't possibly do anything else. I don't know anything else. I tried to take a wellness client once. I tried to, do other, things, and it just, marketing is so much tied to business strategy that there was too much of a learning curve. I didn't understand how the business worked. I didn't understand the needs of, any of the players, and it just really solidified for me that this is where my skills lie, and this is what I'm best at, and this is the audience that I can serve. So that's a little short story on how we got here today.
Yeah, and hopefully you enjoy it too, because it seems like you've got an incredibly well-rounded career and education. So that's fantastic, right? So you're doing what you like.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of the people that listen to the podcast and I work with are residential designers, either running solo firms or very small, like less than 5 employees. And they don't have your background, because I'm also assuming that these companies, design companies that you are working for, are larger and have more of an organized corporate structure. So there's lessons you were probably learning from other people that you were working with that a solo designer on their own, they don't have those resources to learn from.
Well,
right?
it's yes. But that actually serves me, because all of my friends, everyone I know basically works somehow in design. They're a designer. They run their own design business, small or medium-sized firm. They are working for a firm. They have done something in the design business. They work for a home furnishings manufacturer or a brand, or they have their own, company. So I really kind of do understand all facets of different, the way businesses run. When I worked for the two manufacturers here in North Carolina, my job was to figure out how to increase our trade business with those interior designers, which hasn't always been the case. Manufacturers haven't always wanted, especially here in High Point, to serve the small interior design firm. They wanted wholesale business. They wanted large retailers. They wanted, volume over a designer who purchases 1 or 2 pieces or doesn't have a showroom or isn't going to do a volume purchase. So the psychology of that is something I really understood from the manufacturer side, but also then getting into the heads of my friends, who I would say, like, what do you need in your business from this manufacturer I'm working for? Like, help me understand what you need in your business. And that was long before I started my own business. And I think, again, I as an interior designer, I get and I understand that marketing, and we can talk about this too, marketing as a firm, right? If you're a larger firm and your face isn't, or your name isn't on the door, your marketing problem is a lot different than a solopreneur or someone who has 1 or 2 people, and your name is at stake, right? So your needs are different, and I understand both. And I have clients on all sides of the scale of industry here, and that's great. And I love to help them really figure out what best serves them from the marketing side and how to really streamline their own brand and their message to reach the clients that they want to talk to.
So when you were having those discussions with designers, when you were working for the furniture company and asking them like, what do they need? Were there commonalities, or were designers like just complete special snowflakes and they all had something different?
No. I think there's so much, I'm going to make up a word, but I'm a marketer, so I can do that. There's so much fractionality, I guess, fracturing in our industry, especially, one example of that is like pricing, right? Every designer does pricing different in their business. But, yes, there are a lot of things that are different, but what I find in creating brands and marketing campaigns for designers is that they all really essentially struggle with some of the same problems. So it's not that different from the manufacturer side. It's not that different either. You're really trying to, over deliver and under promise, right? Make your client really happy, because they, at the end of the day, if they look good in front of their clients, they're, not having to go back and forth with broken or damaged product, or, dealing with delays that can't be accommodated for. They are the ones taking up all of that from the manufacturer. And if the manufacturer can, again, sort of serve them in the best possible way, then the designer looks great. So yeah, this very similar problems across the board.
And I would also assume like that switch of furniture manufacturers or lighting or whoever towards recognizing that designers are like individually, yes, sure, you're a small fish in a big pond. Why should I spend a whole bunch of time and attention on you? But there's how many tens of thousands of people who identify as an interior designer just in the States alone. Like there's so many. So as an avatar, it just seems like good business. Why would you not want to have that? I mean, it's great to be able to put your furniture into, a mainstream store, right? But there's tens of thousands of designers out there.
Yeah, I think the designers or the businesses that really, followed up on that kind of B2B business directly with the designer are seeing the value of that, especially post 2020, when, the consumer, the amount of sort of purchasing that's done influenced by interior designers and what they're promoting brand wise is really that's a train that you didn't want to miss. A lot of manufacturers did, because they dismissed the designer as a good lead or a good source of business.
Right. And now we're seeing branding deals between furniture companies and higher profile designers. That's happening.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let's take a look at your clients. I don't want to use my special snowflakes again, but like, do you have a wide range of clients, or do you even like hyper focus? Like, let's look at residential versus commercial, big firms, medium firms, small firms. What does it look like, your client base?
My clients are mostly small 1 to 2 to 3 person interior design firms, or small architecture firms. I would say less than 10 people at the most. And that's great, because what that means is either on the solo side of that, they're going to be hiring, someone to support them either through content development, or they're gonna piece and, part and piece out their marketing and branding building. And they're going to find someone who's going to help with the brand. They're going to find someone to help with copy. They're going to find someone to help to build the website. And they're going to find someone to help with social, and that's great. They're not trying to do it all themselves. They have realized I do have the client profile for me is certainly someone who knows how to delegate, regardless of whether they're just starting or they've been in business for a long time. They really know that they can't do it all, and that they don't have the capacity or the bandwidth or the expertise to take it on doing themselves. If it's a little bit bigger firm, 5 to 10 people, they probably have someone in-house. They already have the budget, or they've worked with an agency before that can take on a larger scope of work. And so that's where we come in with that. But anybody over that, like 10 plus, 20 plus, I work with them on a consulting level. I have done that before, especially for manufacturer side. I've consulted just to put fresh eyes on strategy, or if they've got a specific product launch, or if they're doing, like a show house. If it's a larger firm doing, some kind of bigger campaign and we need to create a small, outreach or a campaign or a brand around that, I will come in and help with that, like one targeted piece of it. But overall, they've got their marketing strategy pretty much dialed in and figured out, but they need really someone who is, agnostic to what they've been doing to look at it through a fresh lens.
For sure. So, but the bulk of your client base are these smaller design and architecture firms.
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me an overview? Let's focus in on the designer side then, and give me an idea of what you do for them, and what you do for them, the services you provide.
Okay. Sure. So we start with branding. Obviously, marketing is just an amplification of your brand and your brand message, right? And your brand story. And those words we hear all the time, people toss them around kind of interchangeably, marketing and branding, but they're not. So we start with branding. I make sure this is super important that the brand is dialed in. Jeff Bezos said, I know you maybe have heard this before, branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's essentially like, what is it about your reputation, about your values, about the promise you've made to people, that gut feeling people have about you when they hear about you? What comes up, right? I take clients through an exercise when we do our kickoffs, and I sort of show very famous logos like Apple and Chanel and IKEA, and I ask them, like, just give me your split second response to this brand. What do you think about, right? Think about innovation for Apple. Do you think about creativity? Do you think about, with Disney, is it family or nostalgia or happiness or like hot? What is the thing that comes up for you? Because that is always, always, always an emotion tied to that brand. And that's what we want to be building around you. Brand isn't a style. It's not about luxury or any particular farmhouse modern or mid-century. Brand is, again, in essence, it's a very difficult thing to immediately slap together. That's why it's not just your logo. It's more than that. And I tell people too, it's like we're more than what we look like. Right? We're more than the color of our hair, the color of our skin, the color of our eyes, the name we have. We are a set of values. We are a set of principles. We are a set of, experiences and histories and languages and cultures. And like, that's richness that creates you as a human being, right? That's a brand, right? You are more than just your logo. So when people say, oh, my brand is, my branding's not right. And I'm like, probably not. If you don't know what that means, how deep it is. Anyway, it's the emotional connection. So we work on that first. Do you have a really true ideology or ethos or point of view that your brand comes from? For Saurit Creative, for me personally, what I'm doing in the brand essence for me is to solve interior design's brand problem. I believe deeply that, and it influences everything, every decision I make in my business, every client I take on, every panel I speak on, any podcast, anything I do in my business, always ladders back to this one principle, which is, how do I help elevate what people think about interior design? How do I get people to stop undervaluing interior designers, to stop bringing them in too late on a project, to really understand what the interior design is for everyone, right? And that there are many different interior designers. One is for you, I guarantee it. And that, when we have a safer and more, a healthy home, we're, better humans, and that can make better culture and better societies and better world, blah, blah, blah. It's a big mission, but that's the kind of thing that I want to help my clients figure out about their own business. And everybody's got that. Like, you don't start a business. I mean, and if you do, you realize you're not going to be in business for very long just to make money. There's some other higher purpose. There's some other higher level mission. There's something else you're doing because you love it. And especially interior designers who are not we're not doctors. We're not saving lives. And I mean, we are anyway, but we're not getting paid millions of dollars. This is not like a immediately bankable profession, and you're spending long days and long nights and years of sacrifice away from your family and away from it can be a lot, right, to start a business. And so you have to really, really, really care about it. And that's where we start with the branding. So I kind of figure out, I help people figure out what that is that's driving their business period. And then from that, we build the brand, messaging. I start with words first. You can't build a visual strategy until you've got that message dialed in. And then we look at an identity, right? What might the logo look like, or how can we evolve your current logo? We look at a series of things after that. Sorry about this. And then we go into, what assets are needed from a marketing side. Do you need a website? Do you need a refresh on your website? Do you need a social strategy? Can we, how does that message then deploy into or amplify into other kind of correct marketing approaches that feel good and attract the right client, the people who are going to resonate with that value system that you're putting out there in your messaging and your branding. And so, yeah, that's, we start with brand first, and then we do marketing. I don't do any PR. I have so many fantastic friends working in this industry in PR. I always recommend, people go and, work with someone who knows what they're doing. But PR is its own, again, additional amplification visibility strategy for your brand. But you've got to get the story straight. You've got to get that brand piece figured out first before you do any marketing. Otherwise, marketing gets really hard. And that's where a lot of people start. And that's why they have problems.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense. I assume that there's probably a big education piece, right? Because when designers come to you, what do they perceive brand is? For me, I've ran 2 fitness businesses, one real life and one in the clouds. And I didn't understand what brand was at all. And one day I realized that what our customers thought we were was very different what people who we were approaching to bring on as new clients. And it was like the clients, it was a much deeper thing, what we meant to them, right? And then with new people, everything was surface. So I would assume that designers coming to you, when they, why do I need help with branding? Like, that's just my logo. And you're just like, no, it's so much more than that.
That much more.
Do you have to teach them first, or is that like it just kind of evolves naturally?
I mean, I have been really trying my hardest, and especially since this business was born during COVID, I just out of requirement had to do a lot of virtual speaking and, virtual staging virtual events, which is great because then, I could distribute my message faster to people. I got to practice being awkward for years before becoming a little bit more comfortable. Even now I'm not super comfortable speaking, but I also teaching. I taught for a couple of years after graduate school. And so I really, really love education. And I love what happens when I see people get it. There's like an aha moment. So yes, I have to do a lot of education. But one of the things I start with, and not to kind of, start on the negative side of it, but this is what most people, they have a problem and then they want a solution, right? The problem is that they're attracting the wrong clients. Like you said, there's a big delta, a big difference between what you're saying and what people are understanding. And what that looks like is a lot of calls where you're saying like, we're not a good fit. They don't want the right thing. They're not willing to pay your fees. They don't see the value in what you're bringing to them as an interior designer. So that one signal that your brand isn't working or isn't dialed in is that you're attracting the wrong clients, right? You're constantly explaining or defending what you do. One thing is too that you aren't able to ask for what you want or what you feel you should be asking for because your clients don't see, again, the value. So you're not positioned as a premium or luxury, even if you say you are, and you're attracting the clients who aren't willing to invest in what you're asking them to. That's a positioning, branding, marketing problem. And then, it's not necessarily, you don't have a straightforward mission or value-based brand message that you can then feel consistent and clear about across all your channels. So marketing is hard. You don't know what to say. You're saying like something different on every single, website, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your TikTok, your X, your whatever. Everything says something different because you don't know what you really want to say. You don't know what your brand represents, or it's unclear, or it's some AI gibbledy gook that like doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So that's why designers really need to care about their brand, really, is like attract the right people, ask for more money and hold market share, and then, feel consistent and proud of what you say. And it's easy, it comes easy.
So would it be fair to say that I mean, we've all got a brand. Like we've got personal brands, we've got business brands, we've all got a brand. Like you
Yeah.
said, the Jeff Bezos quote, right?
Yeah,
It's what people say or think about you when you're not there, kind of thing.
that's
Do you
right.
find that
Mhm.
designers they literally do not know their own brand? Like they may think they're one
Yes.
thing, but the world is telling you that ain't you.
Yes. Yes. And that's really why it pays to hire someone who can think about and put some, strategy around who you are. They're going to ask you the right questions. They're going to be leaning in and looking for certain things, right? They don't need to know your whole story at all. Like they need to know a certain amount of things about your business to be able to frame it and package it and brand it for you, or create a brand strategy for you that will resonate. That's the expertise around branding. It isn't just finding one story. There's like a lot of moving parts and pieces that you have to think about and consider to be able to create something that's going to resonate. I have a whole framework for it. And once I explain that kind of to clients, and I teach that in the workshops and things that I do, to really help people sort of see and understand that it's a complex practice of figuring out your brand. And it does take a little time, but once you spend that time, it's just like anything, like it's just like fitness, right? You're going to do as much as you can based on your goals, right? And once you do, it becomes part of who you are, right? It becomes a lifestyle. I presume. I'm not sure if that's the best analogy. Super into fitness, but I think there's something there.
No, I get you there. But you know what? It is the same thing because I mean, interior design at any price point is a luxury, right?
Yeah,
I mean, as long as it's
exactly.
not a DIY, like if you're actually hiring a designer to design something, that is a luxury. Um,
That's right.
my fitness businesses were a luxury. Like
Hmm.
to actually
Yeah.
train with me at that before I retired the business and sold them off, you paid a ridiculous amount of money, right?
Yeah.
It took me a long time to feel comfortable to charge that money,
Yeah.
right? And I know for sure designers are in that same boat. Like,
They are. I know they are.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Can you give us maybe let's look at either a real life example or
Hmm.
maybe if you have to make something up,
Yeah.
two identical type of design firms, maybe a small firm, less than 3 employees,
Yeah.
a before and after with crappy branding and with good branding, what that can do for you.
Sure. I would say if we look at like same talent, two different approaches to brand, right? Maybe one, let's say designer A has a strong brand, and that looks like a really clear voice. They've like got a really polished online presence. That's their Instagram or their social media, their website, right? Really good photography, super important. That's a whole nother podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But excellent visual communication includes beautiful, consistent typography, a really consistent color palette, a very singular, cohesive message that is client focused and emotionally driven. It's a narrative that speaks to people about them, not about the designer. Number one, we can talk about that in a second. So some examples of that, like Marie Kondo, I know she's not even, I love to use her as an example. She's not even an interior designer, but that ethos again, that ideology is that organization is self-care, right? Everything you have needs to spark joy. That's like, that's interior design in a bucket, but yet she's not even an interior designer. So let's say, okay, designer B has no brand or hasn't really worked on it, or, just for the default of saying it's not anything wrong. It's just that they've not put any effort into doing it, and that's fine. They have beautiful work, right? But maybe they've got a generic or an outdated website. They've got an unclear offer. They are doing everything for everybody. They're inconsistent in their messaging. They're saying something different across all those channels. Everything, email signature, LinkedIn, their profiles are all saying something different. And that message is convoluted or it's too generic. And it's about them and not their client. And some examples of that, and these are actual, but I don't call out people specifically, but I have seen more interior design websites probably than anybody on this planet. And I have a little, Google Doc full of whenever I see an example, I will copy paste of a bad one and a good one. I don't see that many good ones unless I've done them myself, but I see a lot of bad ones, and I'll tell you what they sound like. I recognize interior designer, admired for her tactile, serene, and dynamic spaces. Another one is your personal style brought to life. Another one is blank is an interior designer best known for balancing modern with the traditional in their signature interiors. Those are beautiful words. I love the idea of something tactile and serene and dynamic, but I don't care, right? These are, your personal style brought to life. Most people couldn't tell you what their personal style is, and that's why they're hiring you to help them, right? So these messages don't mean anything. They sound great, and they might look great on a website, and they may sound like what everybody else is saying, and that's usually what drives people. It's like, well, I don't know how to do it. I've got to do my website myself. I'll just go see what blank, blank, and blank are doing, and I'll think of something that's relative to what I'm doing. This is the old days. Now they're going to run it through ChatGPT, which is like the very worst thing you can do because you're just going to make it worse. And then you put that on a website and it's like people sleep as soon as they get there, they bounce immediately off the page. It doesn't mean anything because it doesn't speak to them. Right. So that kind of messaging is what designer B is probably doing. Designer A is getting the right fit clients. They're already sold on what they do, their process, their values, their aesthetic. They don't need a whole lot of convincing. Designer B without a brand is getting a lot of looky-loos and tire kickers. They're getting kind of unclear inquiries. They're going back and forth with people. They're getting on calls. They're doing a ton of emails. They're putting out proposals that are not getting responded to. They're getting ghosted. They're getting misaligned on budget. They have to over-convince even the prospects because they haven't built trust, right? Branding is essentially a trust exchange, right? How do you get someone to understand that you are going to give value to their life as quickly as possible, right? So for projects, like for a great brand, if the designer has a really great brand, designer A, they are going to be getting full service, high investment projects with clients who trust them and give them creative control and creative freedom. But designer B is going to keep doing smaller one-off projects. They're going to get stuck explaining their worth, or they're going to compete on price, which is none of us want that. Designer A, who's got a great brand, is getting press, referrals, vendor partnerships. They're getting approached by brands to perhaps do collections because their brand tells a clear story, right? It stands out, it makes sense. And that designer B is getting passed over, not because of talent, not because of effort or education, but because no one understands what makes them different. So, the stakes are pretty high when it comes to branding.
And if we're just going to be, crass and talk about money, I'm guessing that the luxury client or the furniture company that wants to do a branding deal, they are more aware of the things that make a good brand, the things that would make a good design company, the things that would make a good partner to get involved with in a project. Whereas the first time customer for interior design service has no clue what the heck is going on, and they will try 15 different people, and they don't know how to judge a higher quality service to a lower quality service. And so if that's something you want to work with more affluent clients, you have to be aware that they are going to be more picky because they understand the difference between good and less than good.
That's right.
And that may have nothing to do with the design.
That's right. That's right. We're in a relationships business. Interior design is deeply personal. And I will say interior designers know just as much about their clients as like a therapist, or, not that much, but we're deep in, and I say we, because I did this, like you're deep into the lifestyle and, the likes, the hopes, the dreams, the fears of that client. And so there has to be trust. And they're also giving you like hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions. I don't know if you're in that level, great. And also time, right? They're displacing themselves potentially out of their home. They might have to take their kids and put them in a different school. I mean, there's huge stakes, right? And so I say that the purchase decision that it takes to be able to, commit to working with an interior designer, that length of time is quite long. So you've built a relationship with them. You have to build trust. They have to, and even if that project goes, a couple months to a couple years, you're in there with them, making decisions, talking about, sometimes things that don't go right, right? How are you solving that problem? There's a lot of trust that has to be built to work with a client, even on a short, like low stakes project. So your brand has to be able to communicate to them before they get on the phone with you, before they agree to meet you, right? It really has to express your level of professionalism, your experience, your values.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so say we had a client, or you have a client, and they've listened to you on this podcast and thought this is fantastic, and they went to you and they did everything you wanted them to do. They were the perfect client for you. Give me an idea of what they could realistically expect to see in the short, medium, long term, and like best case scenario.
Yeah. So do you want like actual what
if you're
actually
willing
happens, or or you want to know the process
can,
of what it's like to?
well, I want to paint a picture for designers, like, and I'm specifically make the point they do what you tell them to do. As a former fitness trainer, business owner, like the biggest problem was like I can give you the best plan in the world, but if you're not doing your part when you're not with me, it's all garbage. So I want like, I'm going to work with you, but I'm going to do exactly what you tell me to do, exactly how you tell me to do it. So I want best case, super awesome. What we can get out of this.
Okay, so I have two ways that people do work with me and understand kind of my process. One is, we do completely done for you services, where your role obviously is to show up, be vulnerable, give me as much information as I ask for, which is what we kind of go through in our initial meetings, is to, tell me about your business. I want to know what's working. I want to know all the problems. I want to know what you've done in the past. I want to know what you really, what do you dream your business? Where's it going? Tell me, all the things. I want to know, what you've done marketing wise. I want to know what you're comfortable doing, like how far and, how bold do you want to go, right? How, where do you want to be? And then, your role is to also be the critic when I present and show options to you to say, nope, yep, I love it. I don't know why I don't like it, but I don't like it. That kind of thing which is what we have from our clients too. And I find most designers are really great at doing that, of course, because the interior designers are also service providers. We're asking the same thing of their clients that I'm asking of you, right? Feedback so that I can move forward and make, the right decisions. And then, if done for you is not an investment that you're, willing to make. And I'm far enough along in my career, I feel comfortable saying like, we're expensive. It is an investment in your time. It's an investment in, it's a financial investment, but we can break that up over time, of course. But with just like interior design, I think sometimes you get what you pay for. I've been doing this enough. I know that we're doing some of the best work in the industry, and I feel really confident to stand behind that. So I think it's an investment. And when people are willing to make that kind of investment, they show up, they put forward, their best. It's the same with fitness, probably. Like your clients who were paying you, I hope were, doing what was asked of them because they were making the investment in themselves, right? This is an investment in your business. And, the people who are the most successful are the ones who really, cherish that and value it. But I also have a marketing school that I teach all these things to creatives, creative service providers, and really introduce them, and then they implement, right? But again, it's an investment, just like anything. Like if you really aren't to the point where you can hire someone to help you, whether it's me or anyone else, the best thing to do is then educate yourself, and not just marketing school, but there's a ton of resources. There's some incredible podcasts. There are, really great online resources and courses, and you can take the time and educate yourself, and you're responsible for the success of your business. You can't put that on anyone else. So, do what you need to do to succeed if it's really important to you. I don't know, was that the answer to your question? Did I go for totally off the deep?
I think it was better than the question I asked. So I think that's exactly what we were looking for.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to get into some just more nitty-gritty details on branding, and I'm curious, does branding differ for the solo designer versus the medium size versus the larger firm?
100%. The solo designer is branding for personal trust, right? Your name's on the door. It's, Douglas Robb, Interior Design. So your face is going to be out there, right? So your voice, your presence, your face, you're the brand, right? People are hiring you. You're going to highlight your personality, that point of view, that ideology, that ethos, right? That philosophy in a way that feels more memorable and intimate and personal to what they value, right? Because it's going to be a one-on-one typically. Even if you've got a few people working with you, it's going to be a one-on-one connection. They really want to build that relationship with you, even if you have a team or a small team that's going to help, implement the project. So it's less about, I was going to say it's still about polish, but you're not a corporation. You do not want to make that impression, because you'll give people, it will put them off, right? They come to your office and there's one person, or they, meet you and it's like, you're not a team. You don't want to give the impression that you're a big corporation. So you want to be more authentic to who you are. People are going to want to know, can I trust you kind of right away? Where you get my vision? How much personal service? And so that then comes in how you message and, communicate what your process is like. But really that difference between a solo designer and a larger company is going to be about personal trust, building that with you one-on-one. For larger firms, branding is about consistency. It's about clarity, making sure that you talk about it's a team effort. They're going to probably not see the principal or principals as often as they're going to see a lead designer or a project manager or someone like that. You really want to make sure that that is communicated very clearly, that you're a team, that you work together. You're going to have to trust, even if you've got, again, one point of contact. It's more professional. It's less personal. The brand needs to say this is who we are. This is how we do things. You have to make that process part really clear. Again, it comes back to a team, and that, we're the right partner for your investment. So typically someone who's hiring a larger project or a larger team like that has a larger project where there's a lot of other stakeholders involved. It could be a commercial project, or it could be, something where it's not going to be a one-on-one, one single homeowner hiring an interior designer. It's going to be sort of a larger project where that larger firm expertise of multiple different kind of specialists is going to be needed and necessary.
Yeah. I had a designer approach me at an event 2 months ago, and they had redesigned their website. They had paid someone to redesign their website, and they were showing some people on their phone, and like a dummy, I was honest when they asked what I thought of it. And so I said, well, I know a little bit about your company, and they were a solo designer and they did beautiful work, but it literally was just them. And I said, this website is a corporate website. This is that team that you're talking about. And I'm like, where did the concept come from? Well, they worked with the web designer and I'm like, you worked with the web designer. Well, they also had marketing support. I'm like, oh, they also had marketing support. And I know nothing.
I know where you're going with this.
And I'm like, you wasted your money. You wasted your money.
Yeah.
I said, what I want you to do is I want you to make a list of your favorite top 10 clients that you've had over the years. This person's been in business for 15 years. I said, I
Uh-huh.
want you to take each of them out for coffee or dinner or something and
Mhm.
get, and we made a list of questions. I said, I want you to ask them these questions. And so they sent them the questions, they met for coffee, they talked, and it was all about what was the experience of working with this designer like? What did you like? What did you
Mhm.
not like? What attracted you initially? At the end of the job, was the thing that attracted you initially the thing that you loved at the end, or was it something different? And then I
Yeah.
said, now, if you want to go back to that same web designer marketing company, you can feel free to do that. But I said,
Mhm.
this is who you are right here, what these people are
Yep.
saying. And I just think
Mhm.
like someone like you kind of already, you have an idea of the industry as a whole, of designers, and then you can ask these questions.
Yeah.
That's still got to be hard to pull that out.
Yeah, it is. But in fact, there's a, I don't know what the learning curve, I guess is the right way to say it. Like I redo a lot of marketing and I've redone actually quite a few brands recently just because they needed to be refreshed. But I see a lot of websites that have been designed by a generalist marketing agency who approached a designer and said, "Hey, we can build you a website for like $200, and then we'll, create a, whatever Facebook plan too." And it's plug and play, it's templated. The copy is very generic, they have their own formula for banging out a website, and the designer gets a website up and quick, and that's sometimes the goal, right? I'm not saying that's not part of some people's process, and that's okay. But if you're going to spend money and you're going to, if you're really committed to growing and building a brand first, then it really does behoove you to either educate yourself or work with someone who understands how to ask you the right questions to help you get to the brand narratives that are going to drive a really elegant and immersive and extraordinary website, which is what you need. Because you're driving traffic from social back to your website. I presume, that's a huge investment. It's a big property as far as your marketing goes. So you really should be paying attention to how much you're spending on it. A lot of people, are going to be visiting it. So make it worth their while. Keep them around for a while.
Mhm.
Just on the, I mentioned this real quick, but I think maybe it's a question we'll get to in a little bit. But a website and a brand aren't static entities. You don't do it once and then forget about it, right? Whew, okay, I'm done. I mean, you can do that for a little while, but like when I was in graduate school, like there was research was a component of it. And I remember, it was 20 years ago, but I remember one of the things they said to us was like, any research that you're finding that's older than 5 years old is no longer relevant. And I thought, whoa, okay, that kind of makes sense. This wasn't hard science, it was interior design, which is a soft science as far as environmental science goes, and not like was like physics or whatever. But from the environmental science, academic perspective, anything that had been done, any studies that have been done more than 5 years were really not relevant. And I think the same is true for marketing, and especially since the benchmark of 5 years ago was COVID. And we know what that did for basic, understanding and appreciation and the valuation of our home and interior design, how we live. We really saw what it meant to be in our homes and what that meant for our health and wellness and for the wellness of our kids and for what that did to our families and our mental health, right? So people really at that time, thankfully for us, really became much more aware of the value of interior design. So I say that just to say, like, if your website hasn't been updated in 5 years, you've changed. The market certainly has changed. The way people perceive interior design has changed. So it's time. Now it's time. Like you're out of date at this point. But again, we're always evolving, especially if you are a smaller interior design business. I bet the way you thought about your business 5 years ago or even 3 years ago is quite different than how you think about it now. The kind of clients you're attracting then is different than the kind of clients that you're attracting now. So it takes, I would say, I tell clients, like, look at your brand, look at your message, look at like what you're putting out there at least once a year, just to make sure that it still feels relevant, still feels as profound and as if you want to be provocative, I like to be a little provocative, like poke people, you know, have a point of view, like make sure that that's still true. And if it's not, then you need to put that in your action item, in your kind of like executive list of things to accomplish for the year. You need to budget for it. If it's something you need to like reshoot photos or hire a copywriter or whatever, like that needs to be, you know, something you put some attention to. But doing that at least once a year, even if it's not a massive renovation, even if it's just little like, you know, tweaks here and there, it's going to serve you than to just like do it and forget about it.
Yeah. And I would assume that the people who are approaching you, they're not those designers. They have taken a look at their website and they've felt some sort of pain that they realize they need to level up what they're doing. So,
Yes.
but there's probably, you know, for every one person that approaches you or any other branding expert, there's probably thousands of designers who haven't looked at their website in 10 years because it's got all the stuff you know. I'm an amazing designer. Here's my phone number. Here's my email. Check out my Instagram.
Yeah, I'm great. Here's my team. I did all this. Look at me. Like, yeah, that's all out there. I have a client now, actually. I adore her. And she has been kind of following me. I think I did a workshop with Business of Home, maybe 2021. And she was in that and she sort of stayed on my newsletter list. And she finally called me last year. She called me the year before that. And we had a little, you know, strategy session. And then she called me last year and she said, I think I'm ready. I was like, awesome. Okay. And then she explained to me that she has had the same website since 2012 and that it has not changed. And I mean, I went and looked at it and she called it a walk of shame. She was like, I just don't have time. I haven't had any, you know, I've been going through all these other things. She was raising kids and like, you know, doing a lot of transitions in her life. She's like, but I'm going back to it now. And now I really want to commit to it. So I get that client who knows very well that they need an update. But I also get clients who come to me and say, you know, what we said earlier, it's like, nothing's working anymore. What used to work doesn't work now. My phone stopped ringing. I can't get in front of the people that I want to get in front of. What am I doing? I don't know what to do. And they don't say immediately, like, it's my website. A lot of times people say it's my social media. And I think just because we feel like that might be the fastest, easiest thing to update because that content's like constantly changing, that maybe if we threw some extra, you know, reels or posts on there, it would magically, you know, bring a million new clients to us. But so the way I work now, this is something I advise to my clients too. It's like, let's say you break you fall, you know, you trip going down the stairs or something happens, you break your ankle, right? You're like, I'm pretty sure it's broken. Like I've broken up before, pretty sure I know that my foot is broken, but I got to go to the doctor, right? So I'm going to figure out who's in my network. I'm going to go, whatever. And I know it's different in Canada, but like in the US, we have like a plan we have to go through. So let's say you go to the doctor. The doctor you can say to the doctor, hey, my foot is broken. I know what's wrong with me. I'm pretty sure my foot's broken. The doctor's like, cool. I went to medical school. Let me just do some tests. Let's confirm before I do a whole kind of set of like a protocol for you that is based on what you are telling me you think is wrong, right? Don't even come to the doctor. But the doctor goes through, you get the x-ray, you get a full diagnostic, right? Takes blood pressure, he looks at all the things. And it turns out you just have a really bad sprain, right? You don't need a full cast. You don't need to be like elevated off your foot for, 6 weeks. You just need to wear this air cast and take some ibuprofen or whatever, and then you're fine after a couple weeks. Meanwhile, you would have done all these other things because this is what you thought was wrong. So I say that as an example to say, like, when clients come to me and they say, this is what's wrong, right? I have to go through a diagnostic, even if I could say to them, all right, I'm going to send you a proposal. I know you need a new website. You need a new social strategy. It's going to cost you, 5 figures. Here's what I think you need. Do I ever hear from them again? No, in many cases, I get completely ghosted, and I don't even know if that's what they need, right? So I changed my process. I got really, and I feel like there's designers shaking their head to this because I've talked to them who have done the same thing with their clients where someone will call and they'll get on a call. They might even go to their house and, they look around, they give them they spend, hours or whatever on a proposal. They send the proposal, the client ghosts them, right? Well, they kind of gave them a script of what they thought they needed, and it wasn't fully diagnosed to what exactly they needed. So I now go through a different process with clients where we do this thing where it's kind of it's a diagnostic, right? I go through a 15-minute discovery call, which is where they tell me their foot's broken, and I say, are you sure? And I say, I said, okay, all right, let's find out. So I do charge for this brand roadmap. We book it. It's a couple of hours. I go into a really deep interview with them. I figure out, like, do all the MRIs and do all the testing and figure out like what I think might be the problem. And then I go back and I figure it out. And then once I come back to them in a second session and present what my, diagnostic is on how to fix their problem. And then I, tell them, here's how we can do it. Or, you can do it yourself. You can go home and build yourself a cast or splint yourself or implement it on your own. That's fine. Or we can implement it for you. And then we'll credit whatever you've paid for the service to what we do in the future. And I have found that gives me actually clients who are so much more bought in. They really understand their own problem. They understand exactly, we're calibrated on how we're going to fix that problem together. They know the length, they know the scope, they know the cost, they know all the things. And I encourage designers to adopt a similar process with their clients too, is that, some they'll do paid consultations where they really understand the client. But if they're not doing that and they're getting ghosted and they're getting, calls from tire kickers and they're getting, all the things, like people just want to know how much it costs, right? Then it's a different, you've got to re-message and re-strategize yourself. And so that is how I begin branding projects with clients. It takes a little bit more time, but again, branding's a long game. So is marketing. It's not, there's no instant fix. There is no, takes a while for things to heal. So just like the body, the same is true with your brand.
And designers should understand that, because in the same way, interior design is it's a lot of time, and people come to think, and they come to the designer and they think they know what they want. And I never remember what this is called, but there's this term for people who they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And they have this weird sense of confidence because of that. Whereas the people who actually do understand what's involved are way less confident. Like they're confident in in what they can do, but they're like, there are so many things going on here. Whereas the person who doesn't get it is like, this will be easy. I can do a branding. I can rebrand my whole business. No problem. Right. Just copy that Nike swoosh and I'm good to go. Right.
Right. Find a great logo on Canva and just bang it out. Look like everybody else.
But yeah, for sure.
I had a client say she was an interior designer. She said, and she was kind of, complaining a little bit about her clients. She's like, no one ever thinks that they can build their own car, but why do people feel like they can build their own home or design their own home? And I was like, that's one of the best examples I've ever heard, and I then go back to designers and I say, like, you guys gristle so much when clients shop you or when they take your designs and your, beautiful kind of concepts, and then they ghost you and they build it themselves, right? But the same is true for branding and marketing, right? Like, you can't do it all. Just because you're creative doesn't mean that you can do it all. So have someone, help you execute, help you implement, see it in a new way.
Yeah, you'd think designers would be able to understand that right off the bat, but I'm sure they don't. So
I know, and I love designers, and I'm not saying this against them. I'm just saying that, having a business, starting a business on my own too. Like I tried to do my bookkeeping. I tried to do contracts. I tried to do, I'm not like framing my own projects or plumbing my own projects or anything, because I don't do interior design. But when it comes to the bigger sort of structural stuff like that, I got help. I knew my limits. I knew where my kind of zone of genius lies. And I also got burnt out doing it all, like trying to do it all and not do it great, do a sort of, meh job at everything, just because I didn't want to invest or didn't, feel like I could let go of the control. But there's other ways to do it. And I think people, once you start to, I would say for a small, a 1 or 2 person business, once you start to invest in having someone help you, you're kind of unstoppable after that. Like once you realize how much time it frees up or how much that expertise can really kind of help you grow and scale, you really you see the value, but it just takes 1 or 2 times for you to be able to give up the trust, make the investment, live inside the fear for a little while, and then go forward and realize that like that's the only true way you can grow and scale your business.
Yeah. Well, just having this discussion with you, it's very obvious that you enjoy what you do. And
I do.
and what part of an interior designer's business do they enjoy? Do they enjoy the accounting stuff? Do they enjoy following up on
Right.
emails? No, they don't. They enjoy design and they enjoy people.
That's right.
So spend your time there. And
Yeah.
to your point, I get it that like the full package that you offer where you're doing everything, not
Yeah.
everybody is going to
It's
be
not for
ready to
everyone.
dive into that, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Just like
Um,
interior design, like not everybody's ready for like a new build or a whole home renovation. Some people need to start with, a couple rooms or, something smaller. But eventually, maybe they turn into a bigger client. Maybe, and maybe not, but maybe
maybe
you get the experience you
maybe
need with a really tiny boutique project and it's great.
Yeah. And especially if it's a small designer and you just helping out a little bit allows them to get 1 or 2 more clients, right?
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
great.
Yes. Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And another value with brand too is like it's not just going to help attract clients. You are internalizing this whole new way of seeing yourself, right? It's like a whole transformation from the inside out, right? That we like sort of again talked about image, but like you feel different about your services. You feel confident, right? You feel competent in how you are positioned or how you are perceived relative to other people in your market. And it's easier for you to go to a networking event or a cocktail party and introduce yourself as not just an interior designer, but as an interior designer that helps families in transition or helps people live healthier lives or whatever it is that you do in that position. It also helps you onboard people faster to your team. It helps your team feel a sense of pride in what they do. Like, and I say team, it could be just like your assistant, right? Or if you have like a project manager or you have a contractor that you work with, and maybe they can refer you to someone else because they believe in your mission too, but they don't know it unless you do. You have to, it kind of starts with you owning it, internalizing it, and being really proud of it.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and come back to something
Okay.
you were talking about earlier with social media and the website,
Yeah.
specifically for residential designers. And
Hmm.
because for the most part, residential design is very local. I realize there are designers
Yeah.
who travel the world and do that, but that's rare. Most
Yeah.
people, they don't even do their entire town or city. They do like a
That's right.
geographically a smaller area. So
That's right.
social media and
Yeah.
brand
Mhm.
um, is very big and all encompassing. But how do you tie it back to that local customer? Because at the end of the day, if you help somebody and their brand is fantastic and they're getting all of these people contacting them, but they're from other parts of the country or the world or wherever, it's like, well, that doesn't really help me. How do we look at brand and that local kind of thing we're trying to do?
Yep. So I'll answer this in 2 different ways. One is to say, social media isn't your only marketing approach, right? And again, talk about like marketing is an amplification of your brand message. And so social media, yeah, there's a couple things like let's talk specifically about like Instagram. This might work a little on LinkedIn too. I'm not entirely sure about how their algorithms work, but specifically on Instagram and Meta, you can geotag or locate yourself if you write like I'm in, Raleigh, North Carolina, or I'm in, whatever, Chicago, or, you put a town, Toronto, you put a town in your post, you locate it. It will then help distribute that content to people who also identify that you have to signal that information through permissions in the app or through other things, they may know it or not, whole other podcast. But anyway, that content will be prioritized to them in that location. Doesn't mean they're going to see it. right? But I'm assuming like if a person is going to look at someone's Instagram, they can discover them one way through the discovery algorithms, if you're lucky, fingers crossed. Or they will have heard about you some other way, word of mouth, meet you at an event, see your website, see you published somewhere regionally or locally, and then go check out your Instagram, right? Depends on who that person is, where that fits in their discovery journey, right? So that's one answer, is like Instagram is necessary. It is not the only thing you need to be doing, but there are some strategies you can do to be discovered locally. What needs to be true about your presence on Instagram is that it is specifically speaking to that local community. It needs to say very clearly in your bio, I'm serving, the greater Toronto, the greater Chicago, the greater Raleigh area with these services: residential, interior design, new builds, blah, 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 renovations, kitchens, whatever it is that you're doing specifically, because those are also part of the search terms that Instagram and Meta and other social platforms are using. You need to say that in your post, right? Here's what we did for this Raleigh area homeowner who was downsizing from their, big home after their kids, they're empty nesters, whatever that story is, right? But it needs to locate itself in that community. So when people are reading through and discovering more about who you are and getting to know your work, they're like, oh, okay. Or you can even be neighborhood specific if your clients are comfortable and you're comfortable with that. But really the city is sometimes enough, or the region, right? North Carolina, if you're willing to travel. But regional, then you need to do it consistently, but make that message very clear that you're based in that particular region. So that's one answer. The second answer is thinking about marketing yourself. Again, where are your clients? If your clients are not on Instagram or not on social media, let's say they're not a generation that's using a lot of social media, or they're a generation that's using a lot of social media, but they're not on a particular channel. I don't want to be too generic, but there are certain channels are better for certain types of demographic. The content is going to appeal to a millennial or a Gen Z more than someone, and there was always outliers, but really, is it more of an investment for you to look at email marketing, or look at regional print or digital publications, right? Regional magazines, regional design, publications might be a better place for you. Doing a show house, doing some sort of in-person networking or event sharing with a local builder or with a local real estate agent, or something like that, then to be thinking that putting all of your energy into social media is the way to do it, hoping and praying that they're just going to discover you. Now, I know those things are expensive. They're more expensive. They take longer. That's why social media is such a shiny carrot for marketing. But it's part of the strategy, right? Just be really clear that your message is, I support homeowners in this area with this service.
Yeah, and I've spoken with a number of designers specifically about Instagram. Obviously, it is like the first choice of social media platform for designers and for homeowners looking for, maybe Pinterest in terms of inspiration and whatnot. But when I scroll on Instagram with my personal, right, even if then I'm thinking about, okay, we're going to do this project. It's going to be 6 months down the road, so I should start looking. So I start looking for interior designers on Instagram, and I'm scrolling. But the algorithm has still been trained on all of the other stupid memes that I've been looking at for the past 6 months.
That's right.
Right. So how is that local designer supposed to not just break out from all of the other designers on Instagram, but also deal with my stupid Instagram feed? Right. It's not easy. So if anyone thinks, social media is like, I'll put up a post 2-3 times a week, that's all I need to do.
I wish I had a better answer about Instagram. I wish we could rewind to 2014, 2015, when it was easier to build a presence, build a following. People's behavior on the platform was different. The algorithms were different. The way it was indexing information was different. The world and how we look at social media was totally different then. And so we're not there anymore. We're now competing with a flood. I couldn't say the number, but an enormous amount of automatic generated content, or not that there's anything wrong with AI generated content, but it's out there because we are now in this habit of having to produce. We're all immature, content producers at this point. We're making movies, we're competing with Netflix, we're competing with, these video-based entertainment channels, and, content that's, more academic or thoughtful. Not to say that thoughtful is the wrong word, but if you are trying to, gain a following by, content that isn't really structured for this type of platform, which is essentially an entertainment and an edutainment platform, you need to think about your strategy, because the algorithms are working against you. People's own personal filter bubbles, that was a really great book a few years ago, I don't know if you read that, are working against you. There's just some factors there. And if you want to succeed at Instagram, you got to play the game, and you got to know what the game is. And it's unfortunately not just about beautiful content anymore. It's about entertainment. It's about getting someone hooked in, and that can be really fun. And if you enjoy that, go for it. And there's lots of people who can build a business and are building great businesses that way. But if that's not something that you're interested in and don't have time for, and doesn't feel authentic to your brand, then you're just it's not a good fit. That's all I'll say.
And no, and I agree. We're already, I wanted to dive in a little bit to get your point of view on artificial intelligence. And I think that's where we just kind of went with that question is, imagine a future, and it doesn't have to be a future. It could be today. Like if I was starting up an interior design company in Toronto, and I go onto Instagram and I find the top 50 interior designers from Toronto, and I scrape all that information and I plug it into ChatGPT or whatever and say, I want you to analyze not just the images, I want you to analyze how they run their business, how they speak, all of these kind of things. And I want you to devise a strategy for me to dominate on Instagram. Like it'll probably, you're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to actually know how to prompt the chatbot, but you're probably going to come up with something pretty darn good, and then you'll just create a bunch of fake images, and you can even label them as fake. You could say, this is an AI generated image of what I would do for you, right?
Yep.
So I can pull this out of my brain and do this for you in real life.
Yeah.
And I realize I'm rambling on here, but this is where I think someone like you comes in, is that the authenticity of brand becomes even more important when we've got more fake stuff coming down the pipe, right? That for people to be able to trust and realize who you are as a human being.
That's right. And really, anybody who's used ChatGPT can see sometimes like what gets generated from that is literally the law of average. Like it is literally pulling together the most pleasingly pleasing, like it's the biggest people pleaser on the planet. Like it really wants to make you happy, so it's going to put together something that sounds like what you want, that's an amalgam of all the things it's seen out there, and is as pleasing as possible. But most of the time it's like your eyes cross, you don't understand it, it's so blah, so vanilla, just because it's actually meant to be kind of, again, pleasing you with the average. So we are entering into, I would say, a trend for marketing and branding that's coming right now, is to say you must be obviously authentic with who you are, but I really would encourage you to, and it doesn't have to be that you're shouting, that it doesn't have to be that you have the loudest voice in the room, but that you have a very clear point of view on what is important to you, and that you use that as a differentiator, that it becomes the thing. And it's easy because like once you figure out what that is, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to talk about the thing I love like again and again and again. And I'm not going to get distracted by what other people are talking about. I'm not going to get like, taken off the point. I'm not going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I am going to talk about the thing that really matters to me. And I'm going to do it in a lot of different ways. And when you figure that out, right, that's something that maybe ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you use can help you figure out, can help you get around to. But it's never ever, and I have been using ChatGPT since like the moment it came out to try to see if it can help me, streamline, brainstorm, be a little bit faster in my work. And it does, in a way, but I will tell you, it has let me down every time when I try to push it to the edge of conceptual, like profound innovation. Like, and again, this is different from an ideas point of view. I know it's doing these things in engineering and in potentially in science. It can really help us make some big breakthroughs. But when it comes to creative thinking, connecting the dots between all the different things, and it's just not, it's not there yet, right? And it's coming with the law of average. And so you're not average. None of you are. I believe that's true for all of us. We all have something extraordinary inside of us. And so your brand is really just figuring out what that is and speaking to it. And that's not something that, an automatic business is going to be able to do for now.
No. And we could train an AI specifically on every piece of content and internal conversations that you've ever had since you've been running your business. Like, so it knows Ericka like backwards and forwards. But I guarantee sometime in the next month, you're going to come up with a new idea that you haven't had before. And they do say that that is the benefit of AI eventually, is they'll start seeing things that maybe, but not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, we've still got some time. I tell you though, I don't know how you felt after AI first. I don't know how long you've been using it, but it seems like a long time because you know it really well. But I remember it was like fall, and I had just started using it, and I was asking it to help me with some messaging, and it was so fast, and it was so okay. It wasn't bad like what I was expecting, but I was kind of like, the first thing it output for me, I literally had to leave my house. I had to leave my computer. I had to go for a walk because I was so taken aback. I think the emotion was fear. I was like, oh, I'm out of a job. I'm done. This isn't, and I thought designers, creative people, we've all, I just pushed into a future that obviously we may get to, but like all of a sudden I was like, within the next year, I've got to I'm gonna have to go back to school. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm like, it's over and done. It was like total doom and scream or whatever. And then I realized well, after using it for a while, I thought, no, we're not even close to that yet. But I would say definitely, if you are not using some form of AI in your business, or you're educating yourself on how to make your systems faster, to make better integrations, to really understand what it's capable of and see it as a potential, watch it in the corner a little bit to see how it might affect your business and how you can pivot. You might be in trouble, because I think, interior designers, the value of interior design is a point of view, which is what we're saying it doesn't have. It can't quite get there yet. That creative, project start, the really beautiful kind of chemistry that happens when creativity produces something. It doesn't yet have that. Can it implement? Yes. Can it do orders? Can it, procure? Could it even, streamline delivery and do all the things like that? Yes. Will it do all your bookkeeping and all your, internal stuff in your business? Will it maybe replace junior designers who are doing all those things? Probably at some point. But is it going to replace true ideation? I'm not sure yet. Not sure
yet. And especially for things that are personal, right?
Yeah.
Interior designers are a fantastic example of that. You are literally wandering through people's homes, going through their drawers. How can we make this better? Right? You're literally in someone's underwear drawer. It doesn't get more personal. And until we all feel comfortable with AI robots doing that for us, which has got to be, even with Elon Musk, that has to be 5 years down, right? It's not going to happen.
Maybe 4, I don't know. It's true.
Okay. I'm sold, right? I've got my little interior design company, and I want to hire you. So what's the next step? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I have a website, obviously, sauritcreative.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn by the same name. There's Ericka Saurit. Instagram, you can find me. I'm there. I'm in and I'm out. So don't expect me to respond too much to DMs. Marketing School for Creatives. If you want to learn marketing on your own, that's a really great place to start. I don't think there's anything else like it, and I'm really proud of building it and offering it to the community of creatives in there now. It's designers of all types, graphic, creative directors, interior designers, brand people who work, who got, like me, were creative and could, make stuff but didn't understand marketing as a, fundamental skill. So check me out there, marketingschoolforcreatives.com, or Instagram, Marketing School for Creatives. I have a newsletter that I put a lot of energy into. I really love it. Try to make it entertaining and funny, and educational also at the same time. So you can sign up for that. And then if you want to talk about your brand, if you feel like something's not working, but you don't know what it is, you've got a broken foot, but you don't know how to fix it, you can book a call directly from my website. I think there's a link at the foot and maybe even in the header, just to book a call. And yeah, we can chat about what's going on in your business and what your dreams and your goals are, and see if we're a good fit.
Fantastic. I 100% appreciate you doing this. I learned a ton, and
You're so
I will.
welcome. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's funny. And you talked about, you doing talks and stuff and feeling nervous at first and awkward and whatnot. Like, I mean, I don't know when it happened for me. Like, I realize, that I'm a goofball, and I'm cool with that. Like, when I do these podcasts, like, I mean, at first I was self-conscious, and now I'm like, whatever. I'm good.
Because you're authentic and you're yourself, right? And so here's the thing, like we were talking about this just before, we started recording, but you put out a podcast, and I recommend everyone go and listen to it. A couple episodes back, where it was like a full AI interview. And it was a really fascinating conversation. It took me a second to realize it was AI. But then I could, there's some telltale signs just because I'm close to it and I could tell, but I thought there's so much great content here. If someone wasn't really plugged into AI, they wouldn't have known. And the voice sounded like you. She sounded like a really great guest. I hope she gets booked again. The AI agent, but really informed on, what questions to ask. The conversation flowed really naturally. That was really interesting. So yes, we have to differentiate by being ourselves. And the kind of freedom for that is like, good, because I don't want to pretend to be anybody else. I'm goofy too, and I make mistakes. We all do. But I think if we can show up as ourselves and show up as imperfect and show up as people really just sometimes saying, I don't know, sometimes saying, let me get back to you, I'll figure it out. I think the better off we're going to be in this world if we just really own the fact that, we're just human beings. That's who people want to do business with anyway. So not computers.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for doing this. I really
You're
appreciate
so welcome. Yeah, no problem.
That wraps up my conversation with Ericka Saurit about branding for interior designers. During our chat, Ericka stressed that a successful interior design business requires more than impeccable interior design skills. Successful designers have figured out how to build trust with their ideal clients way before that initial outreach. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It would really help us get this podcast off the ground. In next week's episode, I'll be diving into some counterintuitive pricing strategies that have transformed a lot of struggling practices into thriving businesses. See you next week.